To begin creating the clickball game, open up Gamemaker and click Continue using the Light Edition. When the program opens, you're going to want to make sure you're in advanced mode. By checking under File, down, and making sure you are clicked on advanced mode. To start the game, we will first create the room in which the game will be played. Over here in our resource pane, we have the different folders with the different assets that we'll create for the game. To start, we're going to click on the room and click Create Room to start our first level. You will see this box that opens up in your window. I'll stretch mine out so that I can see the entire frame of the playing area. The first thing we're going to do is to change the color of the grid. If we go to our background in the color box, we can click in the color box and choose a color. For this game, we're going to press the green swatch, and you'll notice that the entire background turns green. The next thing we want to do is we want to change our snap X and snap Y grid lines. These are measured in pixels and represent the space in between each of the blocks. The grid lines do not show up on the final drawing, on the final game. They're just here to help us guide us as we create the game. We will change both of these values to 20 pixels. You'll see by clicking the button to the right of it, we can toggle what a grid looks like when it's on and when it's off. We will leave it on for right now. With the color set, we'll go over to our settings menu and we'll see the name of the room is room 0. That is the name that will show up on the left hand side in the resource pane underneath your rooms. In the caption for the room, we'll write Level 1. This is the title that you will see in the top left-hand corner when the game is being played. This names the level and lets us know which room we are working in. Check to make sure the height and the width of the room are 640 by 480. And once this is done, we can close the dialog box by pressing the green arrow. And we will now want to save our game. With the pane closed, we'll go to File, Save As, and we'll name the file your last name _ click ball. We'll press OK, and the game will be saved. With the background and level created, the first thing we're going to do is create a new sprite from our sprite menu. Sprites are images that are used in the drawing and can be used a variety of different ways. We will name each sprite and then assign an image to those sprites. To name our sprites, we'll always start with SPR _ before the name of each sprite. The first one we'll create is ball. Under Load Sprite, you should be taken to your Gamemaker file where you can select bouncing balls, and we'll use the ball pinball. You will notice that the pinball has now been loaded and we can set it into our game once we've created an object. Now you'll want to press the center button and look up here in the right hand corner, and you'll notice that the crosshairs are dead center in the drawing. If you do not click center, when the sprite goes into the drawing, it will not be centered in the grid, as you will see later. With the sprite named and loaded, we'll press OK. Create a second sprite, SPR _ wall, and we will go into our maze game platform to get the wall sprite we're looking for. Wall block. Open and press OK. Now notice your two sprites are loaded in the top left hand corner. You now have two sprites. They are listed in the resource tree in the sprite branch. However, the sprites cannot be placed in the playing board, only objects. You will now create objects. These objects have to wear the sprites on top of it, and then will be placed into the room. To create an object, we will go to the Objects toolbar, right click, and press Create Object. We'll name each object OBJ for object, and the first one we'll be creating is the ball. We will load the sprite so that it is a ball, and it assigns this object with this sprite. As you move down, you want to make sure the checkbox says visible, but do not check the solid checkbox. We do not check the solid box because the ball will be moving around the drawing once we start playing. Objects that moved do not get checked solid. If we have to make them solid, we will do it in programming later. Objects that stand still, such as the wall, we will set to solid. But for now, we will press OK and then create a object for the wall. OBJ underscore wall. Assign the sprite. Visible, and this object, the wall will not be moving, so we will press OK. You now have two sprites and two objects assigned. Now you can press the save button and save your work. Our next step is to add the objects to the room that we will be playing. We'll open up our room and again expand it so that you can see the entire room, and you'll see down here the object you want to add is selected in this window. We will take our ball object and click to place it somewhere in the room. Left click any in the room to place the object. Notice that the object snaps to a position that is aligned to the top left corner of the grid. Now, since we set our ball to center before, you'll see that snaps to the center of each of the grids. Had we not clicked center before, the ball would show up in the upper left hand corner. Once you place the ball, if you look down here to the left mouse and right mouse buttons, you can move the objects around the room in different ways. If I hold the Alt button and move my ball around, you'll notice I can drop it in areas that aren't at the crosshairs. Once your ball is already placed, if you hold Control, you can move those balls into different directions wherever you want. I'm going to add a third ball, so we have a total of 3 balls in the room. With the balls placed, we'll go to our objects and bring our wall objects in. If you hold Shift and drag your ball across the top, the walls will show up, but with a space in between each one of the blocks. This is because our grid size is smaller than our blocks. To fix this, we'll change our grid size to 32, which is the same size of our blocks. I'll right click, delete my blocks, then hold Shift and put them back across. I'll continue to frame out the room so that the wall will act as the boundary for the. When you're done, you can click check to save the room and click the file save button to save your game. Remember, the way Gamemaker works is it uses events and actions to create interactions needed in your game. Your game does not yet have any programming, only a scene design. The first program we will do is to create an event for the ball to move in a random direction in the room when we start the game. Random actions and chance allow for the game to be more unpredictable and more fun when they are replayed. To do this, we will open up our ball object and we will first add an event. To add events, we click on the Add Events button and press Create. What we have now done is add an instance where the ball is created and will appear. When the ball is created, or the event happens, we want an action to take place. That action will be to move in a fixed direction. We will drag and drop the actions into the Actions window, and we will get this dialog box. The top radio section, it's called, says that the motion either applies to itself, other object, an other, or an object. We will leave this self so that the event is applied to the ball and the ball will move as we define. Clicking all 4 of the corners will allow the ball to randomly move in a direction, and speed of 5 is the speed to which the ball will move around. It's important that you not put this too high or too low, or the game would be too difficult or too slow to play. The relative box is very important also. Remember, relative is a term that means from where it was before. If the ball is already moving at a speed of 5 a relative speed of another 5 would increase the speed by 10, by 5, not to 10. In other words, the new speed would be 10, and the object would start speeding up as it's traveling. Instead, we will leave this unchecked so the ball will have a constant speed of 5. Press OK, and OK again to save the work. Now we want to test to see if our work is correct and the program is working correctly. We will press play, the game will compile, and if done right, when it's opened, the balls should be bouncing around, should be moving around the room at a speed of 5 in random directions. Alright, however, you notice that they move directly off of the screen. What we have to do is to program what we call a collision theory. The collision theory is something that happens that when objects touch each other during gameplay, they will bounce when they collide. Think about a flying game with an airplane in a cloud. You do not want the clouds to react to the airplane all the time, but you should be able to have them interact if you want either of the instances to bounce off. To create this bounce programming, click on the ball object, and we'll add another event. The next event we're going to add is a collision. And since we have the sprite programmed, we want to know when the ball collides with the wall, an object will happen. In this case, what we want to happen is we want the ball to bounce. We can leave this so it applies to self, so the ball, when it applies to itself, bounces off the wall, not precisely and against solid objects. Now, solid objects is the key. In order for this to work properly, we have to be sure that the wall is a solid object. Let's go back, open up our wall, and check to say, yes, it is solid. Let's press OK, OK again, and compile our game. Now when the balls bounce around and hit the walls, they should bounce and stay within the boundaries that we predefined. And there we go. Let's once again save our work. Now that we have our basic room established, we must create a reason for the player to play the game and interact. To do this, we are going to add a simple command that enables the mouse to be clicked on each ball and to score a point. When the point is scored, we are eventually going to hear a sound. To start this process, we're going to open up the ball, and we look at our events so far. We have a creation event, we have a collision event with the wall, and now we are going to add an event with our mouse of left pressed. Make sure you hit left pressed and not left button. Left button means you hold the mouse down, whereas left pressed is a click and release. Now we have an event, and we got to create the action. When the left mouse button is clicked on top of the ball, we're going to want to score a point. We will set our score to 1. You see the relative checkbox again, and this time we will click the relative checkbox. This means that each time the mouse is clicked on the ball, we will add a 1 point to our score each time. If you did not click relative, every time you scored a point, the score would not increase. Let's press OK. OK, and test the game. You'll see, as I mouse over each ball, each time I successfully click in the right spot, the score will increase. Now, it's difficult to know when you click because you only see the score increase, nothing else. What we'll do to fix this is we will create a sound to go along with the mouse click. So before we can set a sound in place, we actually have to put the sound into the program and create it. Right click and create the sound. We'll name this file SND underscore click. Next, we'll load our sounds. Our sound can be found in our sound library, and you can scroll down and click on one of the clicks that you see here. I'll take click 1, press open. Make sure you have a normal sound playing and it is preloaded. And you can raise and lower the volume depending on how loud you wish it to be. We'll keep it all the way up for this example. I'll press OK, and now you see a sound is loaded into our resource column. So now we will continue along with our left press event. When the left key is pressed, we will set the score to 1, and then we will, from our main 1 menu, insert and drop, play a sound, which we will define as sound click. Leave the loop to false. If you press true for the loop, the sound will continue clicking and not stop. If you leave it as false, it will click 1 time, hear the sound, and then will end. Let's press OK. And now we can go back and try this to make sure the sound is working properly. Now each successful click on the balls will result in a click sound, knowing that you did click the ball. And save your work. Now you have the elements of a simple game, but it needs a little tuning or improvement. Start by adding some sound to let them know where the player has been clicked for the pinballs, which we have already done. And once this point has been received, we will then add some additional gameplay features to the game. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a victory condition. A victory condition is what it takes to win the game. In the clickball game, the player will win if the ball is clicked a total of 5 times. The game needs to be programmed to check each time a point is scored to see if the total is enough to win. This procedure is called a test. In a test, the program looks to see if the condition is true or false, meaning does the score equal 5 or not. Each time the program tests this condition, it will either return a value of true or false. In this case, the victory condition is true when the test is returned with a score or equal to 5 points. The event we will be programming in the left column is, for our ball, when it is left pressed and the score is clicked to 1, what we want to do is we want to create a score test. And the test value will be the number that the test will be looking for. Instead of going to 5, for this example, let's just go to 3. And now that value of 3 indicates that when the score is equal to 3, the next event will happen. Well, that event we want to be the ending of the game. Now, it's important that the end of the game is at the bottom of the action tree. The action tree will take place from top to bottom. So the score will be checked to be 1. The sound will play. It will test to see if the score is 3. If this is true, then it will end the game. Press OK to save. Pause the video. Test your game. Click 3 times and see if the game ends. Did it work? If so, great. Click your left press and double check your actions. If it's working well, we'll start the next step, which is to add another room to your game. To do so, we're going to right click and we're going to say duplicate. This way we don't have to recreate all the conditions in the room. I'll open it up so it's nice and large, and what we'll do now is we'll play around with the background by adding a texture instead of just a color. To do so, we're going to go over here in our background menu. We're going to right click and create a background. Once the background is created, we will name the background capital BCK underscore wood, which is the type of texture we will be importing. Once it is named, we're going to load the background, and in your backgrounds folder, we're going to select wood, and you'll notice that it loads. If I press OK, I now have a background that I could set to the new room. Changing the background, let's click on the background tab, and instead of clicking on color, we're going to click down here on the backgrounds, which will load whatever is up here in the backgrounds folder. If you wanted other backgrounds, you could simply right click and add additional backgrounds to the folder. Now that I added the wood background, I can either keep changing it, change the color of the walls, or in this case, I'm going to add
just a couple more walls to make the game just a little bit more challenging. You could add a couple too. Don't add too many for now, and keep it simple. Now we have a second room named Room 1 with a different color background and some objects. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to change the room. If you remember, the first Room 0 was level 1. Let's make this level 2 of the game. Press to create the second room. We must now create a scenario where we are actually able to go to the second room that we created. This event will again be under the ball object and will be under the left pressed. As it is now, one click gives us 1 point, plays the sound, and the program checks the 3 if the score is equal to 3. And the game ends. Let's change that by deleting the game ends and changing to see if the score equals to 3, let's say equals to 2. Now this option will test to see if the score is 2. When the score is 2, we are going to want to program to go to the next room. The next room goes down the sequence, and we will add a transition, fade in and fade out. Let's give it a test. One point, 2 points, and I automatically switch to the next room with a new background and the balls bouncing around. Close out, and now's a good opportunity to save your game. From here, let's see if you could add a new room and the command on your own. Start by duplicating your room, and naming the room level 3. Change and design this room around so it is a little bit different, as it is the third room. Don't go too crazy and too difficult, but you can add different sprites, and you can add different balls, colors if you would like, and you have to make sure that you jump from room to room using the exact same process you did before by programming the ball on the left pressed action. Go ahead. Well, how did you do? Let's take a look at the tweaks I made to my game. Level 1 is the same, where when a score of 2 is reached, I will jump to the next level. And in the second level, which I changed around, I set a condition where a score of 3 will jump me to a third level, which looks like this. Now in my third level, I can also score points by clicking the balls. However, I did not set a victory condition in which the game ends. I can go on clicking and scoring points forever. The victory condition will be the next thing that we set. If you're having problems, let's take a look at the code under left pressed, where you could see that we're looking for a score of 2 to go to the next room, 3 to the next room, and then go to the next room. We will now set the conditions for the end of the game. At the end of the game, the player should see some sort of congratulations or message knowing that the game is over. To do so, let's click the Create Sprite button on the toolbar, and we will create a new sprite enabled end text, SPR underscore end text. Now, instead of loading a sprite, we're going to create our own sprite by editing. Once we go to Edit Sprite, we're going to go to File, New, to create a new sprite. Change the width and the height settings to 100 by 100, and press OK. A square canvas with a checkerboard pattern is displayed in the sprite editor. The checkerboard pattern represents transparent parts of the image that will not be part of the final image. Double-click on the checkerboard canvas to open up the image writer. Notice the cool color palette on the right-hand side of the image editor. The left sample is what it is used for the text. If we click on it and then select the color, that color will be used for any text that we create. Right-clicking on the right-hand side will set the color for the sample. Next, we will click on the text button, and we will notice we have a couple options that show up. We will double-click on A to see the font selection window where we can change the different font. We're going to use a size 20 for our text size, and bold for our text style. We will then press OK.
Click anywhere on the image canvas in the checkerboard section to begin placing the words. The Draw Text dialog box will be displayed. Enter the text that you wish to show as the game concludes. Congratulations. We will then press a hashtag which indicates that it will be the end of that line. And winner for the last line. Exclamation point. Before you hit OK, let's double click and copy by pressing Control C this entire text line and press OK. You'll notice the text appears in the box but is too big and will not fit in the drawing area. We'll have to resize this canvas in order for it to fit. Let's press Control Z to take the image off of the box, and now go up to our transform, resize canvas, making sure the keep aspect ratios box is not checked, and resize the canvas to 300 by 100. And now we can press OK. You'll see the size of the box is now greatly increased. We can now click in the top left hand corner and we'll see the drawing text box where we can just paste by hitting Control V what we've just cut out. You'll see the box appears in large print across. We will press the center button to center it in place, and we can drag it into position so that it is approximately in the middle of our drawing area. With this, the sprite is finished, so let's press the check mark to save it. Check mark again, and now our sprite end text is congratulations, you are the winner. Pressing OK, we will now go back and create another object, obj underscore end text, and add the end text sprite. With the end text object complete, we will create another room. So we'll duplicate, or actually in this sense we'll create a new room, and we will create a background that will make the text appear clearly. So since I have a yellow background, or yellow lettering, I'm going to use a black background. Press OK. And now I'm going to add end text to the room. Remember, if you don't place it exactly where you want the first time, you can hold the Control button and move it into a place approximately in the center of the drawing. We can now press the check marks to finish the room, and now we want to go back to the ball and set the victory condition that sends us to the final room or the end of the game. As it's set right now, a score of 2 sends you to level 2, a score of 3 sends you to level 3, and now we are going to insert a score of 4 by adding our test score. So we will test to see that the value is 4, and when it is, we will then advance to the next room with a fade in, fade out. And let's test to see if our room works. Here on level 1, we'll click, and the second score will send us our second room, third room, and to our congratulations or the end game, you are the winner. If you have the screen, so far so good. When the congratulations scene appears, we want to have two choices to end the game or to play again. We will need two more sprites and two more objects in order to make this work. We'll start by creating our sprites. We'll name these sprites SPR underscore quit and load a sprite. The sprite can be found in the sprites folder and in the buttons. You'll see different lettered text. In this case, we will be quit button, and press OK. Make another one for playing again. So we'll SPR underscore play and load the sprite from the same file. Let's create two objects for each of the sprites. obj underscore quit, and we'll define the sprite as our quit text, and obj underscore play, and assign it to the play tab, play sprite. With our objects created, we will now program them to do the corresponding actions. Let's open up our object quit, and in our events, we want to add an event that when the left mouse button is clicked, the game ends. So we are add our event. If the left button is pressed, the action will be to end the game. Press OK. Now let's program the play button. So when the play button is clicked with the left mouse button, we don't want to end the game, but instead we want to move to a different room. We want to define the room not as the next room, but a different room. So we'll drop a different room in, and you'll notice we can select where we go to. We want to go back to the first screen if we're going to play another game, which would be room 0, and we'll use the same fade in and fade out technique. Press OK, and OK again to end the programming for the play and quit objects. With the buttons programmed, we will now place them inside of the final room. Let's open up room number 3. We have our play object, and let's click to insert it on the screen. I'm going to move it into position using my grid points to snap so I can line it up. In this case, I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over, and then I'll change the object to the quit button, add that in at the same spot, and move it over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over. Let's save the room. And now before we test the room, we need to reset the score when the play button is pressed as well. Remember that the event that gets it to the last screen is when the score is equal to 4. What we have to do is go to our play button and say when the left event is pressed, we're going to go back to room 0. But before we do that, we need to take the score and give it a relative score of -4. Relative. Now the new score, pressing the play button, will subtract 4 points from the 4 that's already there, giving us a 0 for the last reset. And test your game. You'll see our score is set to 4. When we press play, we should reset to the first level, and you'll see our score is still 4. So we have to go back and adjust one of the values. What we want to do is, before we go to room 0, we want to bring the score up to reset it to 4, and then go to room 0. Let's try it again and compile it. And one more time with that adjustment, we'll press play. You'll notice our score is reset and our level is back to 0. The last step for our game is to add a title page at the beginning that states what the purpose of the game is and how the game is played. To do so, we will create another room, and again we will add a background. I'm going to use yellow this time, and I'm going to create another sprite. And I'm going to name it Clickball. Oops, and I'm going to edit this sprite and actually create one using a width of 100 by 100. I will double click my image. We're going to resize the canvas right off the bat this time at 300, 100, and making sure my text size is nice and large, bold, and I'm going to use a black background color since my color of my background is going to be yellow. Top right corner, and we'll say Clickball. Press OK, and I'll center it up. Actually, let's change that color here. Clickball, save, save, OK. And now in room 4, I'm going to place my clickball. Oops, I forgot to make it an object first. It has to be an object to go in the room. OBJ underscore set the sprite. And now we can set our clickball sprite, object I should say. And the last thing we'll do is we'll simply write some rules out. Again, we'll make another paragraph, another sprite, the rule sprite. We'll create a new sprite. And again, we'll edit to make a new sprite with our width and our height at 100. Double click. Make our canvas size 300 by 100. Check our font, 20, bold. Let's click, and it'll say click, pin, ball, hashtag for new line, to score points. And there it is. Let's center it, and then move it to where it's just about in the middle. Okay, okay, okay. We have to make it an object so we can place it in the room. OBJ underscore rules, and the sprite looks like rules. Let's open up room 4, and we will place our rules. And let's also place our start and our end buttons. So we'll have our play. And our quit. Okay. Press save. And the last thing we're going to want to do is to rename our rooms so that they make sense in the dialog. We are going to drag room 4 to the top and double click. Now room 4 will be named title. Screen. And the caption will say welcome to Clickball. and say OK. Double click on room 0, which will be the first room, and we'll change this to room level 1. OK. This will be level 2. Level 3. And winner. And we'll make this caption winner as well. Okay, let's give it one final test. Okay, we'll start by clicking on the play button. And I slowed down the pinball so they're easy to click, and you can see our score. Level 1's 1 point, 2 send us level 2, 3 to 3, 4 to the last screen, and I'm going to play again. Now you'll notice that the score did not reset, which means that we can't get off of this level. What we need to do is go back and change one small command under our rules. We have to change the play button to add an event. So when the play button is pressed, it's going to send us back to the first level, but we also want to create an event where the score is set back to 0. Press OK, OK, and compile. Alright, let's test it one more time. Winner, and back to level 1, which enables us to click through. This will wrap up the first portion of your game. Quit, and you'll go back to the designer. Now that you have the basic game down, you can try some different tweaks to make your game more interesting. Here are some examples that I have done to my game. When you click the play button, you'll notice there are now 4 basketballs bouncing around, the same as the pinballs. You'll notice when the basketballs hit the pinballs, they jump to a random position and move about the drawing to a different spot. Now the balls work the same way in terms of the scoring. When you click on each of the pinballs, they will move to the next level. However, the challenging part now is that the basketballs are moving just a little bit faster, and when you click one of them, the game is automatically over. Pressing play will send me back to the first level, where I can try once again. Take some time to plan out what your tweaks are going to be, and begin changing your game to make it more difficult.